DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. It is time for the question of the morning. The esteemed Brett McMurphy has the Utes in the college football playoff after winning the Big 12 conference. Now, wouldn't that be a great bounce-back season? Did you expect these responses, PK?
I don't know what they are.
Aha! Well, there's Jared lecturing Utah. They haven't learned about being overly arrogant in the preseason. Question mark. Well, it's not they. It's Brett.
Sure. Yeah, I get your point.
But it is assigned to the Utes. Vernon, that's how they got in trouble last year, getting arrogant and listening to someone's opinion and getting overly confident.
I think they got in trouble because Cam Rising didn't get down.
Bing. Preseason rankings, in someone's opinion, proves diddly squat. They still have to show up for the first game and play. I don't agree with 11-1 season predictions. They still have to go to Morgantown, Provo, and Tempe. Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. They don't have to go
Except
to Tempe.
they do not have to go to Tempe,
no, they play,
take that out.
Yeah, they play Arizona State at home. But they do play those 3 all in a row, and that on paper looks like it could be a difficult stretch.
Well, it's supposed to be a difficult stretch.
It is. Stuff isn't supposed to be easy, please.
Yeah. So I think you can look every team and say, wow, that's a difficult stretch in the Big 12. Literally every team, because this conference has a lot of talent in it. And so, yeah, I get that. But I'm not really worried about the schedule because you don't know. Oklahoma State was supposed to be a pushover by the time they came to Provo last year, and it took just like every bit of the 60 minutes for the Cougars to win. So the schedule is just that. It's the schedule, and it'll be hard. Conference games, I've always bought in, even when they were in the WAC and Mountain West, obviously. And conference games are hard. Teams get up for conference games because they matter so much. So, yeah, it's going to be hard. But I can see where McMurphy's line of thinking is, because I look at teams when I do a poll or try to see, is this team going to be able to recreate what it did last year? I was talking to this with somebody just the other day about one-score games. And one-score games, not where a team is up by 13 and gives a late touchdown.
Right, yeah,
I'm talking about a legitimate one-score game right down to the end. The Cougars and Devils had a bunch of them last year. And to be able to recreate that is awfully difficult because things really have to go your way. And we know that very football takes fluky bounces sometimes, like in Kansas State. For the Cougars, it seemed to bounce their way. It was like a 3 or 4 minute stretch there where the ball is all bouncing around. We remember the Kingston one and then the fumble return. And it has to bounce your way. And it happens sometimes, right? And so I look at teams that have a bunch of narrow wins and figure, okay, say they have 4. 1 or 2 of those the following year, just because of football, will probably be losses. Now, the flip side is if you have a bunch of narrow losses like Kansas had last year, they went through a stretch where it seemed like every game was a one-score loss, and it was right there, and something crazy was happening. And the Utes obviously had a disappointing season, but they had a bunch of games that they were right there, and if they have any form of offense, they can win. They even as screwed up as last season was, they were just a few plays away from winning 7-8 games. And I know that's what we do in sports, but I'm trying to take emotion out of it and fandom out of it and look at it as rationally, as logically as possible. And so if I do that, I'm thinking that, man, if they get any kind of offense, they should be in the mix. Whether they're going to win the conference, it's your guess, my guess, whomever, Brett McMurphy's guess, anticipation, prediction. That's all fun stuff, right? But I think they have a legitimate chance to get in November and have that opportunity.
If they keep their quarterback healthy this year, which obviously hasn't happened the last 2 years, but if they do, if he comes anywhere near replicating what he did at New Mexico, the defense looked really good last year. and it looks like it ought to be really good this year. So it shouldn't take a lot of offense. It's not like the offense is going to have to be great, and doesn't it have to be better?
Well, if Dampier's healthy, absolutely it will be. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind.
So that's what he's banking on.
I understand. I know exactly what he's banking on. Yeah, I get it. I don't necessarily know that that's good enough to put them in first place, though. I guess you don't have to be first or second, and then win the game. In Dallas there, or Irving, or wherever it is. Was it not Irvine? What's Arlington?
Arlington. Irving was their old stadium.
And I was going Irvington. I was combining the two places.
Combining the two places. It emerged these towns.
I was trying to think of it. But yeah, so get to that point. I mean, it's certainly conceivable, especially when you think about they don't even have to win the regular season. You only have to win the one game. If you just finish in second place, you're good enough and you're good to go. So I could see where he would think that. I probably wouldn't pick it myself, but that's the two different things. I'm going to look and pick a conference standings, but I'm not going to pick who's going to win the game in Irvington.
That's going to become a thing now. Just embrace it.
Let's go to Irvington.
Let's go to Irvington for the Big 12 Media Days at the Star, and then we'll be back to Irvington
Even
for
though
the
it's in
conference
Frisco. So
it doesn't matter. It's all Irvington now.
Irvington?
Yeah, merge them all together. Why not?
They call it the Metroplex. It's just one big area anyway,
it's
right?
True, yeah.
Arlington actually sits between Dallas and
it's
Fort
like
Worth?
the
Doesn't this
city
thing
is
draw
right
from
in
both?
between. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right in the middle.
I mean, it's like L.A. It's, driving across it is, hour, 2 hours. You've been stuck in traffic down there, I know, because you told me about yeah. There was when we were just starting out, there was a radio station down there that was held up as the example of all things awesome in radio. And so you were there and stuck in traffic, so you got to listen to it. It was raining and parked on the freeway and not moving. And then you told me, like, yeah, they're saying stuff on the air that definitely wouldn't fly here. That's we can kind of be like them, but we better not be really like them because we'll all be in trouble.
Right. Their standards were something that would not fly in our community. The stuff that they were talking about. And the Cowboy season was over because it was basketball season, and I flew into the Dallas airport, and I had to drive all the way over for basketball at TCU, and it was a Friday. So, it took me a good while, and I did turn on the station. And it was just stuff that, like, oh, my goodness gracious.
A little closer to Howard Stern than what we're doing.
Totally, 100%. I was really shocked that that's what they were doing and what they were discussing. Yeah. Something that we would never discuss. And then there was some bootleg sound of a Van Halen record that they had, and they were talking about. I could live with that, but the other stuff that they were talking about,
nope.
That is a satellite radio discussion, man. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. So it stuck with me. But I wouldn't even want to talk about that. I mean, basically, if our guys did, I would say, "Come on, guys, we don't need to talk about that."
Oh, pulling back the curtain. That's an epic line in a meeting a long time ago. Come on, guys. So to get back to Brett McMurphy and get this thing back on the tracks, I'm the one who did that. Brett McMurphy, here's the other thing he's leaning on. And I think that, and this is another thing you can't guarantee with injuries and all that, but as much as you hear people saying great things about the Utah defense, and you can look at previous years and back it up, and people say great things about the offensive line. And so as much as we talk about, can this OC do this or that, and can this quarterback do this or that, and those are important jobs, so it's totally fair game to talk about what they might be capable of. The thing everyone seems to agree on is that the Ute offensive line is going to be awesome. Now, to be awesome, it has to stay healthy. We get that. But sitting here in the preseason, man, it's getting pumped up. They got a first-round draft pick in that O-line. They might have a couple of draft picks in that line.
Oh, they most definitely have. They might have 2 first-round picks.
And dominant from one tackle to the other. So when the O-line is awesome, well, you can pretty much do anything behind it.
Well, yeah, I would be a little bit cautious on that because the guys that are expected to go high were on the team last year. And I don't know that they're any better.
And you got to keep the QB healthy. But I mean, they are expected to dominate. Now we'll see if they do. And
the defensive line, I mean, they have a lot of irreplaceable parts. They always seem to do. but at the same time, they're missing 2 studs up front.
Took a big hit.
One at BYU and Tafuna being the other. So it's going to take a little bit of. I don't know that I can just come out and say, wow, they're going to be awesome.
But I get why he's leaning into this pick. I get how he got there. Now, I think you could get a whole bunch of other places, and we can get into that in another segment. There's plenty of other teams you could have picked that would sound just as reasonable.
Yes, I think it would sound more reasonable, actually.
Okay. Because those are who you'd be picking and who you will pick and what we'll hear more of when you're at Big 12 Media Days.
Right, but I still say that this team, I expect it to be in contention in November.
So will this standings look like the standings last year? Like we know the 2 teams that got to, what was the name of that town? Irvington? Yeah, they got to Irvington and played for the title, right? We saw ASU and Iowa State there. But there were 4 teams tied at 7-2, and there were 3 more teams 1 game back. And what was so stunning last year was that the teams that got picked at the top were way down at the bottom, and the teams that were at the bottom were way up at the top. But the fact is, if you picked any of those 7 teams, it wouldn't have been nearly as outrageous because there were literally 7 teams within 1 game of going to Irvington.
Well, I think some things have to happen in order for that to happen is that you have to have an absolutely horrendous team that everybody beats, literally everybody beats. So you're it's not a guarantee going into it, but afterward you got the win. And we had that with Oklahoma State and to an extent, Utah, right? So the teams that we thought would be tougher, circumstantials, and they weren't. So that gave teams wins. And I don't know necessarily if we're going to have 2 teams that you would expect to be better and go a combined 2 and 18, right? Is that what it was?
2 and 16.
2 and 16.
Yeah.
So if we have that, I think there's a likely chance. And also the fact that it's such a large conference and you don't play so many teams, that really factors into it. We had this to an extent with the Pac-12. You played your teams in their division, so that was 5 games, and then they had the crossover games. So what, you were only missing 2 teams on the other side? Is that the way it played out?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's not that much. Here, you're missing a lot of teams, and so because of that, I think that leads to a more jumbled conference standings because, you didn't have to play this team, you didn't have to play that team.
It might have sorted itself out.
Yeah, and I think it tends to do that, and you have the logical standings of everybody played each other, and the good teams, most of the good teams beat the bad teams, and so you had that order and descending all the way to the bottom. Now, with so many teams missing each other, I think that lends itself to more teams being closer together. You look at the Cougs, right? They didn't play Iowa State and Colorado last year, right? And so they didn't have the opportunity to get losses to good teams. Utah did play both of those teams, and they lost to both of those teams. So you have it's such an, not the word isn't imbalance, but it's just, to me, in my mind, because of the almost like haphazard nature of a schedule now, that you are in the situation where you're going to have these teams that can be, standings are going to not be deeply separated from 2nd place to 5th place or whatever it might be.
Well, they can ride that defense, and they can ride that O-line. I mean, that's always been the team is built the way Kyle Whittingham would wish a team to be built, right?
They always are.
Now, can they execute it?
When did they not?
Well, I mean, they don't have an O-line like this every year. I guess to your point.
They had it last year. It's the same guys are back.
Right, but they weren't back last year. Did you know they were going to be this good?
I knew
They were
Spencer
still
Fano was going to
ascending.
be this good.
Yeah, Spencer
Absolutely.
Fano,
I'm sure
agreed.
Yock knew Spencer
He was-
Fano was going to be that good.
He was back, and he was
Breaking
changing.
news.
He'd already been on the field as a tackle, and he was changing sides, but nonetheless.
Hell, he's so good he could play two positions at once.
Tackle and guard.
He'll hike the ball and then be the lead blocker on the sweep. I mean, he came in from literally day one.
He was supposed
if
to
you
be the
come in
guy.
from day one and you're a big-time player at Utah, you are an NFL player.
Yeah, that's pretty much established now. That's
Right.
That's what's happening.
Now, the offense is going to be better, but I wouldn't necessarily point to the O-line because the O-line is what it is. It's what's going to make the offense better is not the O-line because the O-line is already there and already been doing its thing. It's going to be the transfer from Washington State. Obviously, it's going to be Dampier and those types of things. Those are my two guys at the top that I expect to have big seasons. What's the kid's name? Parker. And with that in mind, that's where I'm going. The O-line has already been established in my mind. It's not new. Now it just has more weapons behind it. If this thing works, certainly the offensive line is going to be a critical component, but it was always going to be a critical component. It's going to be Dampier with his electric ability to get out there and then trying to tackle that dude. Good luck. And then obviously the running attack, which they always seem to have anyway. So I totally get what McMurphy's saying. Absolutely. I buy it. And also I think there's another aspect in that Utah, and I'll go to my grave saying this, at least now, maybe 5-10 years from now it'll change, that they are the most disrespected team in college football.
I'm going to be
Or overlooked, not disrespected. The most respected, overlooked team. They're not overlooked. They haven't been overlooked in years. And this is a classic example
of Brett McMurphy not overlooking them.
Right. But yet, they're out in Utah. It's like the Van Horn thing years ago. Oh man, how come you have a little axe to grind that you weren't recruited by the Pac-10? And I was sitting right there the day before the draft because, nobody comes from the WAC and is the second player and it was understood he was going to go number 2 behind Duncan at that point, right? And so you just assume, there are two things they assumed about Van Horn. He wasn't recruited by the Pac-10 and he was a Latter-day Saint. And he was neither. Not that it mattered, but they just assumed a white guy from Utah, right? And he was recruited by the Pac-10. He just chose to go to Utah. And it's the same thing. Utah, they're just overlooked. No, they're not. They get enormous amount of respect, and this is just another latest example of it. And all the respect that they get has been earned. That's what's so cool about it. Everything that they've accomplished as a football program has been earned.
DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. While the Utes are picked, there are other teams that could be picked. We will get to that next. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone.